Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo.
And we're back on Access Tech Live now. Next Monday, we're going to be experiencing something that some say only happens every 350 years. That is a total solar eclipse. But what is actually happening during an eclipse? What actually goes on? And can we watch it? Can we actually look at it, Mark?
Well, those are all great questions, Stephen, and we need answers. So, Stephen, we caught up with Tracy Webb. She's an associate professor at the Department of Physics at McGill University and the Trottier Space Institute, and she helped us get to the bottom of some of these questions we have. Let's take a listen. Tracy, what is a total solar eclipse by definition?
It's very simple. It is when the moon, which orbits around the Earth, moves between us and the sun and blocks out the light from the sun. We can have a partial eclipse where it just moves a little bit in front of the sun, or a total eclipse, which is what we're having this time, where it blocks out all the light from the sun. So it's basically the moon casting a shadow on the Earth, and parts of the Earth are underneath that shadow.
Now, we've read that this, and I mentioned this at the top, but this only happens once every 350 years. But Mark and I have been talking about this, and we feel we remember the last one, and we haven't been around that long. So how is that possible, Tracy?
Well, so it is more frequent than that. It's sort of once a generation, but I do remember one from my childhood as well. So the next one in Montreal will be in early 2100s. Now, you may be also remembering a partial eclipse, which happens more often. But the total solar eclipses are sort of 100 years, is my understanding.
Okay, so from what I get to, and based on my research too, Tracy, is that, you know, it doesn't happen in the exact same place in the exact same way as often as we think. But I remember, and I actually looked at pictures, I remember Donald Trump as president walking out on the steps of the White House, looking up at the sky when we're all saying, no, don't do that, wear the glasses.
Yes, so let me just be clear there. The eclipse does happen multiple times a year. It's just whether you see it from your location is every 100 years or so.
Now, this one is pretty significant, and I think it's brought to our attention because, I don't know about you, I've got young school children, and they moved a pedagogical day from early in March to April 8th because kids would be getting out of school when the eclipse would be happening. And because there is a risk of causing harm if you do look at an eclipse, it was a way to say, okay, let's put you parents in charge. We're not going to be in charge of this anymore. So how dangerous is it to look at an eclipse while it's happening?
Well, to look at an eclipse directly is very dangerous. It's like looking into the sun. When we look into the sun, there's an aversion reflex that happens. It doesn't feel good to look at that bright light, so we look away immediately. The problem with an eclipse is that the light from the sun is being dimmed, and so that reflex is less. Now, it has to be pretty covered for that to happen, but it is happening. And so it may be possible to look at the sun and not want to look away and hurt your eyes. Now, of course, we will all be watching the eclipse, all the astronomers at McGill, and we will be watching it through these glasses, which I'm sure you'll ask me about. And that allows us to watch safely.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about that because I didn't even realize that you could even look at it. I've heard of various things over the years where you use cardboard and you put a pinhole in and you look at the cardboard, not at the sun itself. But there are glasses you can use. So talk us through these glasses. What are they and what kind of quality are they?
Well, I think the quality can vary. So I would, first of all, suggest that everyone gets their glasses from a reputable source. Certainly here, there are lots of sources of glasses. The Trottier Institute that I'm part of is going to be giving them away on campus. But my understanding is that you want to look for a little sign or a little label on the glasses, which of course you can't see right now, which says meets the requirements for ISO, and then there's a number, which I can read if you want, certification. And so you're looking for this ISO certification.
So basically what you're saying is Amazon may not be the best choice to go pick up, 200 of these in bulk.
Well, I haven't done the search on Amazon, so I don't know what they're offering, but I certainly know the University of Montreal, McGill University, the Science Center, we all have very good glasses.
Now, what is it exactly in the glasses that is protecting us? Is it a UV thing? I guess the question is what is causing the damage other than the fact that we are looking at the sun, whereas instead of having the reflex of kind of, blinking our eyes and looking away, we don't have that reflex, yet the effects of, I guess, the UV, is that what's causing the harm?
Yeah, it's the UV light, and it's basically increasing the temperature in your eye.
Okay, so that makes sense. So when you explain it like, if you look at the sun now, your reflex is to look away because it's too bright. And obviously that's what causes the damage. And because it's covered, it doesn't mean that the UV is not getting to you. That's still the same amount. It's just that visually you're not getting that reflex, which would cause the harm. That being said, is there an amount of time that's good or bad to be looking at it? Or we should just go the route of glasses?
Yeah, go the route of glasses for sure. So it is true that during the total eclipse, so the quick moment of totality, it is safe to look at the sun. But I have certainly been telling people it's best, that's hard to judge. I think on McGill campus, we're going to have an alarm go off when it's safe to take off your glasses and safe to put them back on again. But I think I will be leaving my glasses on all the time.
Yeah, I guess there can't be any harm if you leave the glasses on, right? Other than not looking at the right time. Is there anything, what do we learn scientifically, if anything, from eclipses? Is there something to be learned from that?
So there is. People who study the sun are interested in eclipses for the same reason that it's dangerous to look at the sun with your eyes. It's difficult to study the sun with a telescope because it's so bright. And so what they have to do is block out the light from the sun in order to study the rays coming from the sun. And so the eclipse does that in a natural way. Now, most scientists would use something like the Hubble Space Telescope to do this, which has what we call a coronagraph, which blocks out the light.
And what makes an eclipse so unique? What makes people so interested? Because, I hear people having parties and picnics and, like Mark says, kids are out of school. So, what is it? What is the attraction here?
Well, I feel like it's seeing science in action. We learn about the solar system in grade school. We hear about it, but it's very rare that you can actually see something that shows you that the solar system is really there. And working the way we know it works. So we can predict these eclipses down to the second for many eclipses in the future. And so the fact that the scientists can tell us that if you look up into the sky at this certain time, you're going to see the moon move in front of the sun is just amazing to people and shows people that science really works.
Climate change is obviously on the lips of everybody these days. We're all looking at the world and how the world is being impacted by our climate and lots of reasons for that. Does your research here have any impact on that? Does it take part with any of that?
No, we're too far away. I mean, this is really a solar system space-based event, not anything to do with what's happening here on Earth.
Do you think, technologically speaking, is there any advancements, technologically speaking, we're a tech show, obviously, do we learn anything new every time there's an eclipse? Is there any kind of findings that we don't already know and have this beautiful opportunity to say, hey, look at that, we just proved this, but we can only do that every, decade or so?
Not to my knowledge, because the eclipse do happen every year, so people who need an eclipse can chase them. But also, most of the research now is done using telescopes that have the design a fake eclipse, basically.
I'm curious to see some of the pictures that we're going to get from some of these satellites and new objects that are already in space from the different angles and things that I know will be beamed down thanks to probably Elon Musk, Stephen. Tracy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We're going to get our glasses at a reputable place. I'm not sure where that is now. Definitely not Amazon. We'll make sure it has the ISO certification and enjoy it with everybody else, please.
Great. Thank you. You too.
Now, Stephen, I actually did buy my glasses on Amazon. There are a couple places that, especially if they're Amazon certified, that they do have the ISO certification, which is pretty cool. And the Eclipse is going to be experienced in so many different ways. I heard a story in Texas. A bunch of students will be using a small device called a light sound box that translates changing light into sound so that blind and partially sighted individuals can experience it. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, I want to get my hands on one of these, but there's only 750 of them apparently that are going to be given out to
Oh,
different school kids around the country, which sounds amazing. So what it does is essentially it gives audio notes to almost visualize the light. So, or giving audio, I guess, to the light. So what you will get is very high flute notes, essentially, to indicate sunlight. And then as the sun starts to be covered by the moon, you will start to hear that sound get lower, and those notes get lower, almost to a clarinet level. And then when the time of totality, when the light is completely gone, you'll hear a low clicking sound. And then you'll start to hear the notes come back up again. A very clever device, very simple device, but really impactful for blind people to allow us to enjoy the solar eclipse as well. Also, worth mentioning that Perkins School for the Blind will actually be broadcasting this light sound live on Zoom. So wherever you are in the world, even if you can't get near one of these, you can still experience it. You can listen by phone as well, which is cool.
that's pretty cool. Look up the number and we'll try to get that up on social media. In Indiana, they've got a tablet with a row of dots that are going to help people feel the eclipse, thanks to research from Indiana's tactical engineering department. And Stephen, my kids asked me if they can use their phones to record the eclipse. And the short answer is yes. But you got to do it safely with the proper solar filter. Some suggest actually putting your Eclipse glasses or a second set, that you might have, because you need to, of course, have yours over the camera lens. Obviously, there are some tips that say disable your autofocus and play with the exposure settings. That way you get the perfect shot. And don't zoom in too much, because the more you zoom, the more it becomes digital, and that'll add too many artifacts and pixelation to it. And, it's even finally on AMI audio, they're going to be broadcasting an audio described version of the eclipse thanks to a feed from ArtSpark TX radio, which is pretty cool. And you heard something from Ira, right?
That's right. Yeah, we talked about it over on Double Tab, and it's very exciting. Ira, the visual interpreter service, are going to be running a live commentary again on Zoom, but also hopefully, if they can get up and running, on their Ira Explorer app, which you can download on iOS and Android, and that will allow you to listen into that commentary wherever you are in the world. They're actually holding their event in Rochester in New York, and it's called Total Eclipse of the Park. Get it? Total Eclipse of the
I like
Park.
it.
See what they did there?
Oh, Lord. Listen, there's a state of emergency in Niagara Falls because they're expecting 1 million people to flock to the area, because that's right perfectly in line. But the state of emergency isn't because they're worried about people, looking at the sun. It's just the sheer amount of people that are going to be there. So the only way they can get the support they need to make sure they can police it all is by calling a state of emergency, which is kind of interesting. But, this seems like, to me at least, and you could tell me if you think I'm wrong or what your opinion might be, but it seems like the most attention we've given to an eclipse of this nature in my lifetime.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, and it's interesting from my point of view as well. As someone who's disabled, I often write this off a little bit because it's such a visual thing, and I think, what am I going to get out of this, really? And obviously, I think those of us who've got any remaining vision left are so terrified of losing it that the idea of looking anywhere near the sun is like, don't take what's left away. But at the same time, this time round, it's very interesting. We do seem to be talking more about it. And the opportunity for disabled people to get involved as well just makes it even better. So we can join the party. And it sounds like there's plenty of parties going around.
Yeah, I did catch up with someone at the Weather Network, and they're going to be broadcasting a video feed of it. So if you are scared and you want to shut the blinds and just hide in your basement, you can do that and turn on the Weather Network, and you can watch it yourself there. And he also mentioned something pretty cool, which was part of the scientific and the research element of this, while it's nothing new, is really the human behavior aspect. The people flocking to places and seeing and how it affects them. And also, you've suggested, look at other things other than the sun while it's happening. Realize how dark it gets outside and see that kind of experience as well. And how the animals react. That's another element that people are going to be studying to make it even more interesting. So it's going to be definitely an experience. And we'll be there watching it on Monday. I'm sure you will be too.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also, from my memory of the last eclipse, it's the silence that tends to follow. Everyone falls silent when it goes dark, which is kind of wonderful and eerie. And then, especially in the middle of a day, right? When that happens, it's really weird. But just an incredible thing to be part of. And it's nice for some of us to actually come together. What a nice thing to come together in this wonderful world we live in.
Stephen, back at CES, we saw a very cool demo on stage, and we had to follow up and get some more information about it. And it all comes together with Intel and their director of accessibility. He's joining us next here on Access Tech Live, so do stick around. We'll talk all about that demo and what it means to our future.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back.